Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Power Panel. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that today's Power Panel is brought to you by Myos MD, which is a cutting-edge nutritional supplement designed to combat muscle loss and support healthier aging. Powered by the ingredient fortitropin, it's a natural bioactive compound clinically shown to enhance muscle growth and reduce anabolic resistance. Myos MD is changing the way we think about muscle health. And if you'd like to learn more about MySND, you can go to mysmd.com to learn more. All right. Well, today in our power panel, we have Dr. Ryan Greene. Would love to hop straight into it. If you can give our listeners some background on you, a little bit about your training and what you do right now.
Yeah, great. So I'm an osteopathic physician. My original route was through the surgical field. So I did a surgical residency, and then ultimately decided that being in a hospital was not the place for me, and found my way through the world of integrative medicine, doing a fellowship at University of Arizona with Dr. Andrew Weil. It's kind of like the founder of the field about 40 to 50 years ago. In between residency and my integrative fellowship, I did a clinical research fellowship at Mayo Clinic in orthopedics and sports medicine. So cut my teeth on the world of academic medicine and research, which was insightful, but ultimately a place that I did not see myself long term. And while I was kind of going through that crisis of conscience of like, how did I get here in a place where I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and ultimately I don't want to be in a hospital, I came up with the idea for what is now Monarch Athletic Club, which is a one-stop shop, multidisciplinary, integrated health and wellness facility. We opened in West Hollywood in 2020, January 6th. So an easy day to remember, January 6th of 2020. Opened our second club in Brentwood, California, in April of 23, and we have 4 more clubs opening over the next 2 to 3 years. So we've essentially created this integrative space that looks like a higher end wellness club fitness concept, but ultimately the underlying foundation of what we do is based in this belief that if you focus on movement, medicine, nutrition, recovery and connection and community, similar to a blue zone lifestyle, you will live a very long and healthy life. And we believe that we can continue to open more clubs that are community based, but ultimately globally connected, because the principles of all those things I just mentioned don't know borders or geography or nationality. Movement is universal, sleep is universal, metabolic health is universal. So we've combined things that have traditionally been isolated and separated, and we've created a space that people enjoy going. And ultimately, as long as you show up, you will progress towards whatever goals you have for yourself, whether that's movement related or life related or whatever that may be. So we're very excited about our growth and success thus far, and we'll just continue to open up more locations so more people can have access to these foundational tenets of health. And we'll continue to iterate as well, because technology is going to allow us to expand our touch points, and I'm very grateful for that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that background. For those of the people who are listening who don't know what a blue zone is, could you explain what that is and why that's so important when thinking about longevity?
Yeah, so blue zones are groups of people, communities around the world, and there's a handful that are known. Interestingly, one is about 40 minutes from where I'm sitting
Yeah,
currently
Loma
in Loma,
Linda.
and
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
and directly across the main thoroughfare from Loma Linda is like a population of people, literally like 30-second walk. That is, the antithesis of that population. So it's quite a stark contrast. But blue zones are basically communities of people that have, very long lives with very relatively low incidence of disease. So the highest concentration of people living to 100 or longer. And if when people have studied these populations, the principal factors that contribute to their success are they move regularly, they eat relatively whole food, plant-based, They typically don't drink alcohol. They get plenty of sunlight. They get plenty of sleep, and they have strong connections in their community. People are staying there for generations, whether it's for religious purposes, geographic, or otherwise. So I've been fascinated by them. By the way, I don't know if you know the background. Like, they call them blue zones because when the scientists were studying, they only had a blue marker, and so when they circled them, like, I don't know if you knew that, but I find that quite fascinating. They could have been
Yeah.
called green zones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was looking at what they were doing, and I was kind of reflecting in saying, like, okay, like, it seems very complicated what we are requiring of people to biohack. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time, and unless you're someone like a Ben Greenfield, who, like, that is his job, like, most of us will, the overwhelming majority of us will not be able to implement all those things. So what are these simple, sustainable, scientifically, undeniable things that we all need, and how can we help bring those things together? I mean, that was my impetus. And that's sleep, that's movement, that's monitoring, metabolic health in terms of avoiding heart disease, diabetes, and then connection to community, which Harvard happiness study a couple of years ago, made a very large splash, saying, like, probably the most important thing for most people living a long life is the quality of their friendships, relationships, and the people around them. So, you know, I I am often like, kind of left speechless by the fact that, like, all these things are very simple and they don't necessarily require an exorbitant amount of money to achieve. So, reducing the barriers of socioeconomic status, yet we don't talk about them. Maybe it's not sexy enough. Maybe, the scientific community, it's like a not big enough accomplishment to, like, get people moving and keep their body weight down. Obviously, the GLP-1 conversation now is, bringing that back around. But it's, yeah, I mean, for us, I think, and I know we'll go into it, longevity, health span, whatever you want to call it, like, the only way to achieve that is if you make consistent good decisions every single day for the rest of your life. Like, and that is a somewhat daunting task because most of us can't think a day in advance, let alone, 30 or 40 years in advance. And unfortunately, by the time we are brought face to face with the reality of our situation from a health, or concept specifically, it's too late. And so that's the cross that I carry, so to speak, is, like, helping people understand, hey, whether you start at 30, 40, 50, whatever, whenever you start, like, if you want to achieve these goals that you believe are attainable for yourself, it's a forever thing. It's not a 30-day challenge. It's not a 60-day challenge. It is a forever thing. So how are you going to surround yourself, support yourself with the tools and the team and the support necessary to allow you to get through every single day? And it's a challenge, but we've seen incredibly positive results with what we're doing here with Monarch. And so, I mean, I have to believe it's possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to start delving into some of the modalities or the different, methods that you've been mentioning. So the first one I'd like to talk about is, exercise, mobility, and movement in general, and how that plays a role in supporting long-term health. And, you mentioned the term health span. Would love if you could define that and how, exercise, mobility, and movement really do play a role in it.
Yeah. So lifespan is how long people are living. Like, it's no consideration of quality of life. It is just literally time. And that has been extended over the last 30, 40 years with the advancement of science. And it is probably going to extend a little bit with the technological advancements of the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Health span is loosely defined as the quality by which you live your life, regardless of duration. So, how long are you living with a quality of life that is consistent? That is, you believe is suitable with, the best version of yourself. And I think most people would say probably, 50 and beyond now, people's health span, their quality of life starts to decline. Um, Man, and that's a tough pill to swallow because, life expectancy now is mid 80s. Like that's almost half of your life, which is going to be relatively poor quality. So again, blue zone populations have demonstrated that they can, not only have a long life, but also have a high quality life, health span, however you want to call it. And a significant part of how that is happening is they are continuing to be able to maintain the ability to perform activities of daily living, and that is probably because they place a great emphasis on exercise and movement, minimizing as much as they can sedentary lifestyle. And, it doesn't mean they're doing, CrossFit or anything like that, but like they're getting exercise, they're playing sports, they're going on walks, they're, doing resistance training as they can to help maintain lean muscle mass. And ultimately, those things will allow them to maintain balance, stability. It'll prevent them from becoming fragile or frail, and ultimately allow them to participate in life to the level that they believe is possible. Obviously, things start to decline at a certain time. But I do believe if you can participate, and the data would support this, is if you can participate in life the way that you want to, there is a level of joy and happiness that is derived from that I don't think you can quantify other than the subjective, how do they feel, quality of life, and satisfaction day to day. So I do think movement is incredibly important. World Health Organization, regardless of what people think about it right now, minimum recommendation of movement per week is 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise with at least 2 to 3 days of resistance training included in that. And the metrics that I've seen, 70-80+% of people do not achieve that minimum movement threshold, which is concerning, very concerning. So, we have, fortunately, historical data. I don't know if you've seen videos of people in the 50s and 60s. There's a President Kennedy established this La Sierra movement program for middle and high school students. And if you look at these historical archives, the body composition of these people is radically different than it was today, but they were also out and about. They were getting at least 30 to 60 minutes of, moderate intensity movement. So when people are like, what's your number one, longevity promoting behavior? I'm like, you got to move. You have to move your body. You see professional tennis now on their courts, from a marketing standpoint, the world's healthiest sport. And how do you quantify that other than if you go play tennis, you're probably out there for an hour, you're probably going to get a good sweat. You do that a couple times a week. You're satisfying this minimum movement objective. The muscle mass maintenance is a little bit of a different conversation because that does require, dedicated effort, progressive overload. But, I'm living every day seeing people who continually choose, it's a work meeting or it's a family thing or it's a travel thing. And, they are spending the overwhelming amount of time in a non-mobile state, which again, compounded over time, people that are listening to this, medical and non-medical, the principles of compounding are ubiquitous, whether it's in business or in medicine. If you are doing things consistently over a long period of time, you get exponentially greater results. And if you don't, the opposite will occur. So, it's as I mentioned previously, perhaps it's because I'm not as intelligent as some of the forward-thinking PhDs and MDs, but I'm like, there is very low-hanging fruit that we are seemingly completely ignoring. And I understand, you got to follow the money, and it's not proprietary to get people to exercise. So I get it, but it doesn't mean it's going to change in terms of its impact on outcomes. And so that's why fitness, movement, resistance training is a critical pillar of what we do here with Monarch, in addition to everything else.
Yeah, and I love the idea that it doesn't have to be something that's so complicated or over-engineered. It could be, oh, you have this meeting coming up. Why don't you take it, on your walking pad or on your treadmill, or if
Totally.
you're lucky with your weather, to walk outside. So
Yeah,
it could be something as simple as that, whereas all of a sudden you have 30 minutes of walking. And hopefully, if you are
totally.
able to get that vitamin D in addition, I mean, wow, what a great, combination of compounding that activity together.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have to practice what I preach. Like this is not because I have to be on camera for this, but typically my meetings, I am trying to move. I'll be, it's not necessarily a walking desk. Like I'll go and zone two. I'm obviously fortunate. I have a fitness aspect of my office, but like, you know, if I'm going to be on a 30-minute meeting, I might as well be walking at a slow pace at a high speed. And like, I get to do that. I understand that's not everyone's consideration, but to your point, like you can get creative. You don't just have to slump in a chair and take a meeting. So, yeah.
absolutely. And then one of the things you mentioned in one of the earlier responses was recovery. And I feel like recovery is like the least sexy thing out there. Would love to hear, how recovery plays such an important role in longevity and in extending your health span.
Yeah. I think we have, at least in the United States, a fairly strong, um, undercurrent that impacts most people is like more is better, more work, more effort, more sweat. And we find that people are hoping that a lot of their maladies or things that they believe are holding them back from the best version of themselves is because they're not doing enough. And again, like something that I have to challenge myself on a regular basis, which is like choosing to not exercise or not do that. You are still doing something. But you are prioritizing the time that your body needs to heal. Most of us don't get enough sleep. Most of us don't have great sleep hygiene, meaning similar bedtime, similar wake time. I was on a panel with Dr. Michael Bruss, who's literally known as the sleep doctor, and you know he echoed something that I felt and seen in the literature for a long time, which is like the data is shifting, which is time duration. Yes, it's important, but really it's like the timing, the hygiene of like when you're going to bed, when you're getting up. My point in saying all that is like exercise is not going to overcome the stress of lack of sleep, sleep deprivation, other sorts of stress. So, when we talk about recovery, it may be lighter volume, lower intensity movement days. Like we're not going to allow people to come in here and just be like, I want to go 10 out of 10, RPE, rate of perceived exert. Like you're not doing that every single day. You may have a coach monitoring, lower intervals on, an assault bike or whatever that is. But also utilizing well-researched modalities, contrast therapy. We have infrared saunas. We have cold plunges. We have the Therabody suite of recovery devices, so lymphatic sequential compression in their boots. And then also helping people understand that uh, like taking time to do things that you enjoy is very important for your emotional, spiritual, and mental health. Um, because otherwise, I do think you will start to develop a negative relationship with these things that are intended to help you improve. Um, and then also, like we have physical therapists as part of our team, and we find that their value is critically important because part of that recovery process is addressing things that are potentially falling out of balance or may need some nurturing, and allowing these people to be like, all right, like instead of waiting for something to become a critical problem, which is typical in this health system that we have, like instead of doing 5 movement days a week, you're going to do PT once, like whatever that combination is. And so like when I think of recovery, I'm not just stating like you need to go on a float tank and you need to do all these other things. Like it's very much just acknowledging that your body handles a great deal of stress, both physically, mentally, as well as emotionally. And like choosing to do something that's not movement related is still doing something. It's just allowing your body to. to restore itself and recover.
Right, exactly. And then another one of the aspects that you mentioned briefly was nutrition. And I know from an objective standpoint, a lot of the healthcare providers or even patients listening to this, they understand, yes, we want to focus on whole foods. So thinking about, fruits, vegetables, high quality protein, and, things like that. But what's something when it comes to nutrition that maybe some people are missing or people are not talking enough about?
I think, let me rephrase that. I know after thousands of visits, most people have no concept of how much they should be eating based on their lifestyle, and also typically have a misunderstanding and insignificant amount of protein consumed, especially if they want to maintain muscle mass or build muscle mass. So I hear, like at this point, when a new member joins our community and club, I want to lose weight, I want to build muscle mass, I want more energy. Like that is seemingly the number one most common set of things that people want. Well, building muscle mass requires you to eat a lot of food and eat a lot of protein. Losing body fat requires you to live at a slight deficit. Like those two things, very difficult to have both exist at the same time. Most people don't know that. They just assume if I lift weights, like the muscle is going to grow. That's not how it works. And it's an interesting challenge that we pose to a lot of our members, and we have 2 nutritionists on our staff, and they're fantastic. Like most of our members are successful in something, business or otherwise. They understand a P&L. They understand a balance sheet. Like they get it. I'm like, if you are taking in more than you're burning, your body will accumulate tissue. Like there's no other way around it. So if you want the opposite of, like, you have to look at the numbers. And to be honest, like everyone says when they join, like, oh, I'm so excited to work with the nutrition team. The lowest percentage of people after their initial visits in terms of like coming back and following up, because there's absolutely an emotional component and a logistical component of like, shoot, like I have to change what I normally do, or I have to potentially eat more or eat less. It's uncomfortable. I don't have time to do 4 meals a day. Like whatever the cavalcade of excuses is, nutrition is the one where I challenge the majority of our members. I say, hey, like if you want to get to these goals, you need to understand the energy balance situation. There were a few studies that came out relatively recently, like not the most perfect, not any study is not always perfect, but I don't know if you heard about the 7-Eleven study. Long story short, people were trying to figure out, can you potentially lose weight, improve insulin sensitivity, reduce diabetes risk, just by purely focusing on energy balance. So they said, hey, we're going to figure out what each individual needs to lose weight, but the only food you can buy is coming from a convenience store, a 7-Eleven. So you're going to buy what you need. We're going to measure and make sure that from a caloric standpoint, it's isocaloric with the level that we want you to be, and we'll watch and we'll see what happens. The people lost weight, their insulin sensitivity improved, their A1C dropped. Is that great for hormone health, cardiovascular disease risk? Like those endpoints weren't necessary, but like their proven point was like energy balance is incredibly important. So if you want to change your composition, you have to know what's coming in. And I think a lot of people, they can figure out, all right, I'm going to budget an hour for exercise and strength training, but then like some days I don't eat breakfast, some days I don't eat lunch. I had a patient the other day, it was 7 p.m. and he's just like, hey, can I get my blood work done? I'm like, yeah, not the best time to do it. He's like, but I'm fasted. I'm like, how are you fasted? It's just like, well, I went through the day and, it's 7 p.m. and I haven't eaten. And I'm like, none of those things are going to help you achieve your goal like that. So I think for me, nutrition, stepping away from the frequently used idioms of Mediterranean diet, like everything you said, we just really try to help people say, hey, like the best plan for you is the one that you can stick with. And ultimately, it is very important for you to understand, like, how much energy does my body need? How much protein does my body need? and let's figure out a way to at least achieve that for the next few months. And then we can, start to work on other aspects of nutrition, gut health, and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then right before we hopped on, you were telling me about some, exciting advancements or innovations in the space. I would love to hear a little bit about, whether it's, pertaining to contrast therapy or just something that's going to help patients achieve this, extension of their health span. What sort of technology are you excited about right now?
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of evidence to support the regular use, just like exercise, of sauna therapies, cold therapies, things like that. And again, like if you're just speaking from your podcast podium, it's very easy to tell people what to do. But then when they have to like actually go and apply it, the logistics become a little bit more difficult. What we have experienced is, we have infrared saunas and we have cold plunges. They are used extensively, which I'm very grateful for. Maintaining those things a lot more difficult. So one of the things that we're going to integrate in our future clubs, and then hopefully backtrack and replace in our current models, putting in a cold room. So there's a company that's produced something called a frost locker. So it's not cryo, it's not a cold plunge, around 39 degrees, higher humidity. So it kind of mimics that feeling of a cold plunge, but can fit multiple people. And that's the other thing, is like most cold plunges, you can put one person in there. But if you have a gym or a fitness space that has hundreds of people coming through an hour, like that is a rate limiting step. So our belief is that we will be able to create a more effective experience, both like from outcomes as well as from a customer service standpoint, by people being able to congregate in warm and then walk into a cold environment and back and forth without worrying about, water treatment and people slipping on the floors and things like that. So I'm super excited about that. And then our team uses a lot of force plate data. So like being able to look at isometric strength, grip strength. Our physical therapists are using what's called a force frame by a company called Vald, so that they can like objectively quantify adduction, abduction, rotation patterns. So when someone's going through a physical therapy program, the advancements of like, how's your range of motion? What's your pain score? Like we can look at and be like, all right, your abduction on your right shoulder where you had a rotator cuff injury is now equal in terms of force generation as your left. Like clearly we are getting towards the point of like full recovery. So like those advancements in technology are pretty interesting, and I'm sure you'll start to see them more, hopefully in at least physical therapy clinics, but potentially in some other arenas as well.
Yeah, I love the idea of quantifying all of that from a physical therapy standpoint, so that you can actually monitor the progress and see how it's changing.
Yeah, and we're playing around with a couple like beta tests of some AI integration. Everyone's talking about it, obviously, but like we do very well. Like members can in the Monarch community can book an appointment every single day for a medical visit or a nutrition visit or a personal training. Like it's all you can eat. But again, like some decisions, especially with nutrition that are being made, are not conducive to me being like, hey, let me go book an appointment with Dr. Swathi at 7 p.m. at night when I'm out at this restaurant. Like, what do I choose? Typically people don't choose it very well. So there's some AI components in the medical world as well as nutrition, where you're basically going to have a high quality nutritionist in your pocket that can look at menus and other things and just be like, hey, like this is your program, this is what you should order, this is how much you should eat of it roughly. Like it's nothing's perfect because there's some other factors, but at least if people have the confidence that like, all right, like I can get good information that's going to help me remain accountable, like I think that's super important, and I think that's the beauty of some of this technological advancement. So we're playing around with that and trying to figure out like what's going to be the best to include to our platform that members have access to.
Yeah, I love that. It's like taking the guesswork out of it and also empowering, patients and members to go out and have a great time with, with friends and with family, but being able to make, better decisions. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. What I've learned in this is like the job that we're doing, I'll be honest, is not very difficult. Like we're doing blood work, we're doing metabolic data, we're helping people exercise. I am continually reminded that part of what is allowing our community to thrive is they have the opportunity to be heard. They have the opportunity to develop relationships with people that are tasked with caring for them, whether it's trainers, physical, therapy, or medical nutrition. Um, and I am, like I said, every day I'm astonished because people find such great value in just being able to like ask a question and not have to worry about what does insurance cover this, what's the deductible. They're not waiting 6 months to go in and like have all these things discussed, and inevitably sometimes like going into a medical or a health appointment feels like you're going into the principal's office, like you're getting your report card of like things that you're not doing well. Like no wonder why a significant amount of people haven't seen their primary care provider in years. Like no one loves to get yelled at. So like we've really wanted to create an environment that is supportive, and everyone says they want to be supportive. I get it, but like we're talking about things that really matter. We're showing people their risks for heart disease, for diabetes, for issues associated with aging, but like it's in an environment where they know like they have the opportunity to improve and thrive, and then you feel more motivated to make the change versus like kind of defensive.
Yeah, amazing. So as we wrap up, we'd like to once again thank, Dr. Ryan Greene for being with us today, as well as Maya MD for being our sponsor for today's panel. If people want to learn more about you, Dr. Greene, where can they find you and how can they learn more about Monarch?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name's below. Pretty easy to find me. Instagram is at Dr._Greene with an E at the end _DO. Monarch is at Monarch Clubs on Instagram or monarchclubs.com. Full disclosure, we are updating the branding on our website. So if you go to the website right now, it will redirect you to our Instagram. But one of those ways, we're very responsive, and we will get back to you very quickly.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much again, and have a lovely, rest of the day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.